International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Welcome back to our coverage of the return home of 3 of the crew members on board the International Space Station later this evening. We welcome you to the International Space Station Flight Control Room as we are preparing for the undocking just a few minutes from now of the Soyuz TMA-16M vehicle that is currently attached to the aft port of the Zvezda service module on the Russian segment of the International Space Station. Here in the ISS Flight Control Room, the Orbit 3 team of flight controllers is on duty at this hour, having taken a handover a couple of hours ago from the previous team. Leading the charge at this hour is Flight Director Brian Smith on the right side of your screen, joined on console at this hour by spacecraft communicator Christy Bertels, who is talking to the crew on board the International Space Station when required in this latter portion of their workday and the wrap-up of a busy work week for them. Meanwhile, this team is about to conduct a poll of all the flight controllers here in Mission Control to get a go, no-go for the undocking of the Soyuz vehicle. The Soyuz landing operations throughout the course of the rest of the day today is actually in the hands of the Russian flight control team, half a world away, at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow, where they too are preparing for the departure of 3 of the crew members who have spent time on board the International Space Station. On board the Soyuz TMA-16M spacecraft at this hour, Soyuz Commander Gennady Padalka, the most experienced space traveler in the history of human spaceflight. He is departing the station after 168 days in space as part of Expeditions 43 and as commander of Expedition 44. He is strapped into the center seat of the Soyuz 16M's vehicle, having conducted leak checks of his Sokol launch and entry suit. Flanked on his left, Andreas Mogensen, the European Space Agency visiting crew flight engineer, VCFE-1 as he is dubbed. Mogensen has spent 8 days on the International Space Station, 10 days since he launched with Russian cosmonaut Sergei Volkov to deliver a fresh Soyuz vehicle to the International Space Station. On the right of Padalka, in the right seat of the Soyuz descent module, Kazakh cosmonaut Aydin Aimbetov, who launched with Mogensen and Sergei Volkov back on September 2nd from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, arriving on the International Space Station 2 days later on September 4th. When Gennady Padalka lands on the steppe of Kazakhstan just about 3 hours and 48 minutes from now, Padalka will have wrapped up a record-shattering 879 days in space on his 5 flights, including 4 to the International Space Station, all of which he served as commander of the station during. That's most days in space by any human being, more than 2 months more than the previous record holder, Sergei Krikalev, the famed Russian cosmonaut, who is now number 2 on the all-time endurance list with 803 days in space on his 6 flights. Padalka will have completed 2,688 orbits of the Earth during Expeditions 43 and 44, having logged more than 71.1 million statute miles during his 168 days in space. For Mogensen and Aimbetov, they are wrapping up 10 days in space, 8 days on the station, as we said, 160 orbits of the Earth, and about 4.2 million statute miles traveled in their own right. The crews had an opportunity to say farewell and to bid each other goodbye just a few hours ago, not quite 3 hours ago, as they gathered back in the Zvezda service module. This is a replay of Padalka wishing the current station commander, NASA's Scott Kelly, a fond farewell. Padalka right there in the middle of your screen, right behind him is Aimbetov, and the farewells were conducted again in the Russian Zvezda service module before the crews moved into the Soyuz vehicle to complete their leak checks and to close the hatches. The hatch closing occurring at 1:17 p.m. Central Time, 2:17 p.m. Eastern Time. Shortly after the hatches were closed between the Soyuz and the International Space Station's Zvezda service module. Leak checks were conducted to ensure an airtight seal in the vestibule between the Soyuz vehicle and the Russian segment of the International Space Station. That was followed by Padalka, Mogensen, and Imbatov donning their Sokol launch and entry suits and conducting leak checks of those suits to make sure that they are in good shape for the high-speed return back to Earth that will result in a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan at 7:51 p.m. Central Time this evening. Once the undocking occurs, that is coming up in just 24 minutes from now, Expedition 45 will begin formally under the command of Scott Kelly. He actually took over command of the International Space Station last Saturday during a change of command ceremony in which Padalka bestowed command of the station to Scott Kelly the second time Kelly has been commander of the International Space Station. There's your crew portrait of the 6 crew members who will be left on board the station at the time of undocking of Padalka, Mogensen, and Imbatov. From left to right, Scott Kelly, Russian cosmonaut Sergei Volkov, Russian cosmonaut Mikhail Kornienko. They will return to Earth as a trio next March, wrapping up the year in space for Kelly and Kornienko. Further on down the line, NASA's Kjell Lindgren, Russian cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko, and Japanese flight engineer Kimiya Yui. Lindgren, Kononenko, and Yui to return home on December 22nd to wrap up what for them will be 5 months on board the International Space Station. About 21 minutes from now, just under 21 minutes from now, the command will be issued to initiate the dual motor drive to open up the hooks that have held the Soyuz TMA-16M to the aft port of the Zvezda service module since it was relocated 2 weeks ago by Padalka, Kelly, and Kornienko during a brief fly-around relocation of that Soyuz vehicle from the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station to the aft port of the Zvezda service module. That opened up the Poisk module for the arrival on September 4th of the new Soyuz TMA-16M spacecraft that will be the ride home for Volkov, Kelly, and Kornienko next March. The physical separation of the Soyuz TMA-16M vehicle is scheduled at 4:29 p.m. Central Time this afternoon, just about 21 and a half minutes from now. That physical separation will be enabled by springs on both sides of the docking interface pushing off against one another to initiate a 0.1 meter per second opening rate, enabling the Soyuz to clear the docking port of the aft of the Zvezda service module. Then 3 minutes later at 4:32 p.m., the thrusters on the Soyuz will fire for 8 seconds for a separation burn that will increase the opening rate of the Soyuz from the International Space Station, enabling it to drift to a point a few hours later to about 12 kilometers away from the International Outpost. The deorbit burn, the engine firing of 4 minutes and 42 seconds that will begin the road home for Padalka, Mogensen, and Imbatov is scheduled at 6:59 and 7 seconds p.m. Central Time. That will be a retrograde firing, enabling the Soyuz to enter into the Earth's atmosphere. Before it does, the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz will occur at 7:26 p.m., exposing the heat shield on the descent module to which the 3 crew members are now strapped in. They will begin their plunge through the atmosphere with the command to open up the parachutes scheduled at 7:37 and 7 seconds p.m. Central Time. First, a drogue chute will be deployed, followed by the main parachute on the Soyuz vehicle. Seconds later, the Soyuz will fire its soft landing engines about 15 minutes after the chutes are deployed in a final braking maneuver, and the Soyuz will settle down at 7:51 and 20 seconds p.m. Central Time, 6:51 and 20 seconds a.m. Kazakhstan time on Saturday morning at a point about 90 statute miles to the southeast of the remote town of Zhezkazgan to bring to a close Padalka's 168-day mission, and for Mogensen and Imbatov 10 days in space, 8 days aboard the International Space Station. It is about 3:10 in the morning in Kazakhstan at the landing site. Again, about 3 hours and 41 minutes or so away from sunrise. 2 other helicopters will be flown, all the 4 Soyuz manned spacecraft, to be on station just in case the Soyuz encounters a problem that would result in a shortfall of its landing some 400 kilometers to the southwest. So the helicopters will be deployed with the prime focus of attention at the prime landing site to the southeast of Zhezkazgan, where not only the helicopters but 4 all-terrain vehicles will be located, as well as an Antonov fixed-wing aircraft that will serve as an airborne command and relay center for both data from the Soyuz spacecraft as well as voice from the crew members on board the station, with Padalka providing, as communications will allow, updated and consistent reports on the status of the spacecraft and the health of the crew as they near their landing site in south-central Kazakhstan. The weather forecast at landing calls for winds out of the northwest at about 15 miles an hour. Overcast skies are forecast with a cloud ceiling at about 10,000 feet. There may be a light rain shower in the vicinity, but mostly to the distant northeast of the landing site. Temperatures are expected in the mid-60s. This landing will occur about 2.5 minutes before sunrise. Just under 15 minutes until the undocking command is issued that will begin driving the hooks open, holding the Soyuz in place at the aft port of the Zvezda service module. It takes about 90 seconds for the hooks to open, and again, springs on both sides of the docking interface then will push off against one another, with physical separation scheduled at 4:29 p.m. Central Time, 5:29 p.m. Eastern. As we stand by for a final poll for a go, no-go for undocking that will be initiated first here in Mission Control in Houston and then relayed to the Russian flight control team in Korolyov outside of Moscow. It is worth noting that after this crew has landed, Padalka, Mogensen, and Ainbatov, they will be brought into the inflatable medical tent nearby the capsule at the landing site, some 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. They'll receive initial medical checkups to ensure that they're in good shape. They will then board individual helicopters for a 2.5-hour flight to the capital of Kazakhstan, Astana, where they will be feted at a presidential ceremony hosted by the president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev. Ainbatov, of course, is the focus of attention for the Kazakh president, as he will be landing not far from where he was raised in Kazakhstan. And of course, as a native son, this takes on increased importance for the people of Kazakhstan, who will hail him as a homecoming hero following his 10 days in space. Only the third Kazakh to fly in space, the first being Tokhtar Obakirov on the Mir space station, the second being Talgat Musabayev, who flew both to the Mir and to the International Space Station, and who is the head of the Kazakh Space Agency, Kosmos, who entered into a contractual agreement with the Russian Federal Space Agency, Roscosmos, to fly Aidin Ainbatov into space for this visiting crew mission that delivered a fresh Soyuz vehicle to the International Space Station. That will be the ride home for Sergei Volkov, Scott Kelly, and Mikhail Kornienko next March. Once the crew arrives in Astana, and once they complete that presidential ceremony, Andreas Mogensen will board a European Space Agency aircraft to be flown back to the European Astronaut Center, while Ainbatov and Padalka will board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to fly from Astana to Chkalovsky Air Base outside of their training base in Star City, Russia, for a reunion with their families. And again, for the record, even though Scott Kelly took over command of the International Space Station last Saturday, that was associated with the swap out of custom-made Soyuz seedliners. Ainbatov and Mogensen had to move their seedliners from the newer of the Soyuz vehicles to this vehicle that they're returning home on, and Kelly and Kornienko had to swap out their Soyuz seedliners to the new vehicle that they'll be coming home in next March. Kelly became commander last Saturday. He will be commander of Expeditions 45 and 46 until he returns home next March 3rd.
Reached 94 and we are standing by for 002200. Copy.
Seven and a half minutes away now from the command to initiate the opening of the hooks, holding the Soyuz TMA-16M to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module. This again will take about 90 seconds to complete, followed by physical separation at 4:29 p.m. Central Time, 5:29 p.m. Eastern Time. The International Space Station is currently orbiting 250 miles above the Earth, moving from southwest to northeast across the heart of India, about to make a pass over Nepal and over western China.
This countries except Nepal have a space program. I mean, India and China.
Everything quiet on board the Soyuz vehicle. Again, the crew is strapped into their respective seats in the center section of the Soyuz and the descent module. The bulbous section at the very top of the Soyuz, the orbital module, and the lower section called the instrumentation and propulsion module. The orbital module and the instrumentation and propulsion module will be discarded at the time of the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz, just before it begins to enter the Earth's atmosphere. The crew strapped in, clad in their Sokol launch and entry suits, which were verified to be leak-free and airtight. Andreas Mogensen of the European Space Agency in the left seat, Soyuz Commander Gennady Padalka in the center seat, and in the right seat, Kazakh cosmonaut Aydin Aimbetov.
Another 5 minutes until the command.
Moscow, are you receiving the telemetry? We still have 2 minutes before the VHF pass. Okay, copy that.
Flight control teams both here in Houston and in Korolyov have given their approval for undocking. Everything is all set. Just 4 minutes away from the command to initiate the opening of the hooks.
0026 we are sending the rest 7 command. We copy you, Gennady. Everything is correct. Okay, do you give us permission to send D-17 hooks open command? We will give you a go right after the time when the command will have to be sent. Okay, copy Moscow.
And the International Space Station and the Soyuz vehicle have passed now within range acquisition of signal over Russian ground stations. 2 minutes away from the undocking command to initiate the opening of the hooks. Less than 4 minutes until physical separation.
Altair, have you prepared for the undocking? The floodlight, the wide angle lens is already, right?
And from a high-definition camera outside of the International Space Station, a spectacular view of sunrise. The station and the Soyuz vehicle about to pass over the border between China and Mongolia.
Also wide-angle lens selection. We confirm. We are receiving the image. The probe is retracted.
The International Space Station now in free drift. All thrusters are disabled during the time of the undocking that is coming up shortly. Less than a minute away from the hooks driving open, and the docking mechanism has now been activated.
It's a go to send DES-17 hooks open command. Okay, so at 27:30 we will issue DES-17 command.
This camera is used for this undocking, because Soyuz will be undocking from the back.
So send the DES-17 command. The indicator hooks closed is not lit anymore. Copy, Gennady.
The visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control reports that the hooks are driving open. This is a dual motor operation, 90 seconds before physical separation. This view from the familiar cross-haired engineering camera on the Soyuz vehicle, along with other engineering overlay, as we stand by for physical separation of the Soyuz TMA-16M spacecraft from the International Space Station.
Yeah.
Yes. So the mechanical contact indicator is not illuminated anymore. So please report upon this separation the status of the docking interface. Okay, copy Moscow.
Physical step.
Undocking confirmed.
Put SSVP mode in work, and we confirm separation. So goodbye, station.
Into the sunlight.
We are in the sunrise, and we're so illuminated that I can hardly see anything. Slava, do you copy? We do copy.
Undocking occurring right on time at 4:29 p.m. Central.
Nothing but blackness, but
while the International Space Station flew 250 statute miles over eastern Mongolia.
Guys taking pictures. Right, so pictures.
Ну, хоть ШРС визуально вижу, но снять не могу. И камера прям бьет в глаз. Ну, понятно. Камера, фара.
I understand.
Может, фару выключить?
So maybe it makes sense to deactivate the floodlight. No, I don't think it's going to change anything, but the headlight is going to turn on right now.
Я визуально это вижу. Сейчас попытаюсь аппаратом приварить.
So, okay, we have deactivated the floodlights. Is it any better? Because I can't really see anything. Alright, that's good. We did not let you down. And I don't think there will be any choice left for you guys.
The Soyuz continues to back away as we stand by for a separation burn of 8 seconds in duration.
What are you saying?
That will increase the opening rate between the Soyuz and the International Space Station.
I can't really respond, and I can't really take a good picture.
Expedition 45 officially underway at the moment of undocking that occurred just 2 minutes ago. Scott Kelly, the Expedition 45 commander, along with his crewmates, Mikhail Kornienko, Sergei Volkov, Oleg Kononenko, Kjell Lindgren, and Kamiya Yui.
Right, we confirm that we have depot activation and we are separating, and the depot thrusters have been firing for 8 seconds. We copy and we confirm that you sent the command and the command has gone through. Okay, and we're setting in the inhibit. Copy. Alright, we are deactivating SSVP. We are sending the power supply. Copy.
The separation burn of 8 seconds from the Soyuz thrusters now complete and good. The Soyuz beginning to increase its opening rate from the International Space Station and will drift to a point some 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn that will occur about 2 hours and 25 minutes from now at 6:59 and 7 seconds p.m. Central Time.
Moscow, how do you copy us? We copy you. Please stand by 1. Inaudible. Soyuz is inaudible. Can we deactivate it? Yes. You have our go to deactivate.
This view from an engineering camera on the outside of the Soyuz vehicle before we passed out of range of Russian ground stations just now, indicating all data is good on the Soyuz vehicle. A smooth undocking for Gennady Padalka, Andreas Mogensen of the European Space Agency, the first Dane ever to fly in space, and Aydin Aimbetov, the Kazakh cosmonaut, only the third Kazakh space flyer in history. That multinational crew now backing away from the space station, heading for a point about 12 kilometers away from the complex for a deorbit burn at 6:59 p.m. Central Time that will begin the road home and a hour-long descent back into the Earth's atmosphere, targeting a landing point on the steppe of Kazakhstan for a touchdown at 7:51 and 20 seconds p.m. Central Time, 6:51 and 20 seconds a.m. Kazakhstan time on Saturday, about 2.5 minutes before sunrise.
Okay, I don't think there's going to be anything much going on here until landing, so I'm going to end the video. So I'm going to end the video here on Mod 25. Goodbye.